Hey, my tarot friends, it's Julie, and welcome to day 2 of 5 days, 5 VRs. In this one, we are doing hashtag October Deckfest by Marlene Teresa, and this is a kind of catch-all tag to encompass all the different ways that we want to use all the decks for the month of October. And so, really, anything goes, and we can use this hashtag however we want. There are just no rules. And you know me as a rule breaker, I love that. So I first thought that I would be showing some of my, seasonal spooky decks, but I've seen other tarot YouTubers show their selections, and frankly, everyone has done such a great job of showing decks that I already have. I don't have anything different. So I'm just like, why reinvent the wheel? Like, they did such an awesome job for me. So instead, I thought I would just have a casual chat about how I've been using the decks. And for sure, it has been a mood of trying to use as many decks as possible and just having a lot of fun. And so some of these decks would be considered, spooky season, and others not, because I just, whatever I felt called to grab from my shelf, that's what I grabbed. And so you're going to be seeing some of that today. I have a dice and decks video where I talk about how I use dice with my cards. It has been to help me select which cards I'm going to choose from my decks. And I decided to finally dip my toes into dice casting. And the guide that I've been focusing on is the Cast of the Wild, created by Lennox Reese. This is a free resource that you can download. So I decided to just keep to this, keep it simple, stupid. And so, just as kind of like a demo example, I would say put down, you know, 3 cards, 2 or 3 cards. And then I would take my dice and just cast them like so. And for me, it was not about having to read all the dice. It was about choosing specific ones that called to me and focusing on those so that I didn't feel overwhelmed. As an example here, I would maybe focus on, say, these 2 and maybe these 3, or maybe just this one here since it landed directly on the card, and focus on this group right here. Go ahead and find the meanings in this guide and go from there and do my reading. That was a way for me to just ease myself into dice casting without feeling like I needed to use all the dice and know all the meanings. Another way that I have been throwing down cards and using, lots of decks this month and really leaning into just being extra with the decks is through larger freestyle spreads. And there are just no rules. I would just grab whichever decks called to me, and I would use my dice to help me select the cards from my decks, as I've shared again in that Dice and Decks video. Here's one example of a reading that I did where I decided to use the Darkwood Tarot, and I pulled the Queen of Swords. And then I cast my dice, and this is about how it landed. It might be a little hard to see, but you have the one up top here too. So I just went with what I was feeling to decide which dice I was going to focus on. And of course, my eyes went immediately to the ones clustering around the card. So these 3 in particular were the ones that I was going to use that day. I mean, I could have gone with the ones that were on the outer edge, no rules, but these were the designations for which cards I would pull from 3 more decks that I wanted to add to the mix. For this one here, it's a little hard to see, but it's a 60, which I just reduced down to 6. So I chose the 6th card in the deck, Hush Tarot. And then the 4th card from the Earthly Souls and Spirits Moon Oracle. And then the 8th card in the Le Vampire Oracle. And of course, I still shuffled these decks. The dice did a fabulous job of helping me choose my cards because, like, this reading was very clear cut for me. And the way that I perceived this message right away is that, you know, this is the lens from which I am interpreting these 3 messages, from the lens of the Queen of Swords. You know, how am I then interpreting the Knight of Swords, Goddess, the monster within, internal struggle, personal challenges, wanting to improve? So without getting into detail, it was a pretty spot on reading. So then on another day, I decided to use some of the same decks, and I was like, oh, what am I gonna do today? So this time I decided on an initial 3-card draw from the Darkwood Tarot, and this is what I came up with: the 3 of Cups, the Ace of Wands, and the Tower. So I first read the cards this way to give me a message. And then I cast my dice, and this is about what it looked like. There are 2 that are off camera because they, flew out and did not land anywhere near the cards. I'm going to use this one to select a card from a deck that will speak to this card in particular. Out of these, this one is dead center, so I will use this one to designate the card for this particular card. And then likewise with this one, this is the closest, so I decided to go with this die. The outcome was the Devil from the Hush Tarot, Hope from Earthly Souls and Spirits, and then Jealousy, Envy, Punishment, Changing Course from Le Vampire Oracle. So then I would read them from bottom up. So the Devil would further inform the 3 of Cups. Hope would further inform Ace of Wands. And Jealousy would further inform the Tower. And like before, this was a really good reading. And it's one of these things where you think that this would take a lot of time. And I certainly thought that, but I have the time these days. And so I wasn't against doing longer spreads. And when it came down to it, didn't take that long at all. It was just very crystal clear to me. So on this day, I decided I'm going to use completely different decks. And why don't we start off with 2 different tarot decks for my initial draw? And so I drew the 8 of Cups from the Everyday Witch Tarot and the 5 of Swords from the Raven's Prophecy Tarot that you saw earlier in this video. And then I read these 2 together to receive an initial message to focus on. And then I thought, okay, you know what? I want to pull like another tarot and another oracle for each of these cards. I used my dice once again, and just as a demo, we'll see how this works. All right, I am going to use, say, like these 2 to designate which cards I'm going to draw from the tarot and the oracle. And then I will use, say, this one, and then there's one up here directly above that you can't see. I will use, say, these 2 to pull a tarot and oracle for this card. With the 8 of Cups, the Notorious JBG Tarot, and this is the Lover's card, and then my JBG Oracle, and I pulled Loyalty. And then the dice for this card had me select the Page of Swords from Phantom Wise Tarot, and the Muse from the Citadel Oracle. And it says generosity, naivety. I then did additional readings where these two informed the Eight of Cups, and these two informed the Five of Swords. With these freestyle readings, like, they've just been coming in really fast and really direct. And I just think there's something to abandoning rules, making them up as you go, that really lends to just feeling more at ease and feeling looser. And I think that can help a reading. I wanted to end this chat by showing a new deck to my collection that I do plan to use very soon, and that is the Jack-o'-lantern Tarot. And this deck has been on and off my retail temptation list. And I had recently seen this on Mims' channel. She was showing her collection of like Halloween themed decks. And when she showed this, I was just like, oh yes, I remember that one. I still kind of want that one. But then she was mentioning how it was out of print. And so then I thought, okay, you know what? Then it just wasn't meant to be. I'm not going to sweat it. There's so many other decks out there and so many other decks that I have. However, I will say, aside from my Spoopy Lenormand, all of my other decks are not overtly Halloween. They are Halloween adjacent, vampires and maybe like creepy creatures or witches. But yeah, I would say this is the closest thing that has just more, I guess, direct Halloween feel with the jack-o'-lanterns. What I enjoy about this deck, oh yeah, I totally forgot to mention, how I came upon this deck was that I was visiting my in-laws in Pennsylvania, and they took me to their local witchy shop, and this deck was there. And I was just like, okay, well then maybe it is meant to be, because it's here. It's at a cheaper price than I would be able to find online. Okay, we're doing this. Anyway, yeah, what appeals to me about this deck is that the people look odd. They look a bit uncanny to me, and I don't know, I think it's just me, but like they give like Hieronymus Bosch. So, and I'm a fan of Bosch. And so that, along with like just the crisp imagery, the bright colors, those were the aspects that drew me to this deck. It's just weird. I don't know. It feels like weird. I don't even know how else to articulate it. And that's what I like about it. So, and you've got skulls. Yeah. So this will be interesting to see how this lands for me in readings. But if any of you have this deck, let me know how it reads for you. All right. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for day 2. And I will see you for day 3 of 5 days, 5 VRs.